The wind off Lake Michigan whipped through the rooftop of the Hancock Center like it had a personal grudge against Chicago. It was March 12, 2025, and the city sprawled out below in a mess of twinkling lights, all sharp edges and soft glows, like a postcard begging to be Instagrammed. Up here on the 94th floor, the air was crisp enough to sting your cheeks, but the view? Man, it was worth every shiver. The kind of view that made you feel like you owned the damn world, or at least a chunk of it. Mia Carter stood at the edge of that world, her white dress catching the breeze like some runaway sail. The satin hugged her curves just right, but the veil pinned to her dark curls was fighting a losing battle against the wind. She didn't care. She was 32, a badass investigative journalist with a Pulitzer nod under her belt, and tonight, she was supposed to become Mrs. Nick Delaney. The Nick Delaney golden boy of Chicago politics, the guy who could charm a room full of cynics and still have them begging for his autograph. He stood a few feet away, all broad shoulders and slicked back hair, flashing that $1 million smile to the crowd of suits and sequins packed onto the rooftop. The setup was straight out of a movie. Fairy lights strung up like stars, a jazz quartet crooning in the corner, and a bar pumping out old fashions faster than you could say open tab. The guests 200 of Chicago's elite were buzzing, their laughter bouncing off the glass railing. Nick's mom, Helen, stood front and center in a navy pantsuit that screamed, "I run this town," her hawk eyes scanning the scene. Sophie, Nick's kid sister, hovered near the cake, sneaking frosting with a grin that said she'd rather be anywhere else. And then there was Mia, clutching a bouquet of white roses, feeling the weight of every eye on her. The priest, a round little guy with a voice like warm honey, stepped up to the mic. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the moment you've all been waiting for. Nicholas and Mia, it's time to exchange your rings." The crowd erupted in applause, a wave of whoops and claps that drowned out the wind for a second. Nick turned to Mia, his hazel eyes catching the light just so. And damn if he didn't look like he'd stepped out of a campaign ad. He reached for her hand, his fingers warm against her cold ones, and whispered, "You ready, babe?" Mia forced a smile. "Yeah, sure." Her voice sounded hollow even to her. Something was off, she could feel it in her gut, that same itch she got when a story wasn't adding up. But this was her wedding, for Christ's sake. She chalked it up to nerves and let Nick slide the platinum band onto her finger. The crowd oohed like they'd never seen a ring before. Then her phone buzzed. It was tucked into the hidden pocket of her dress, Lena's idea. Because a girl's gotta stay connected, even at the altar. Mia ignored it at first, but it buzzed again, insistent, like a mosquito that wouldn't quit. Nick raised an eyebrow, still grinning. "You gonna check that, or should I?" "Funny," she muttered, fishing it out. The screen glowed with a text from Lena, her best friend and the sneakiest damn hacker in Chicago. "Listen to this before you say I do. Audio file attached. Trust me." Mia's stomach dropped. She glanced at Nick, who was now waving to someone in the crowd, probably Victor Salazar, that slick bastard in the tailored suit who'd been bankrolling Nick's campaign. She tapped the file, slipped in one AirPod, and hit play. Nick's voice crackled through, smooth as ever but laced with something darker. "Yeah, Victor, I'll take the cash. Just keep it quiet. Mia's been sniffing around Salazar Construction for months. She can't know." A pause, then Victor's oily laugh. "Smart boy, you're gonna go far." The world tilted. Mia yanked the AirPod out, her breath catching like she'd been punched. The bouquet slipped from her hands, petals scattering across the polished floor. Nick turned back to her, his smile faltering. "Babe, you okay?" She stared at him, the man she'd spent 2 years loving, the man who'd sworn he was clean when she'd grilled him about Salazar Construction after her exposé last year. The man who'd looked her in the eye and said, "I'd never lie to you, Mia." And now this, his voice, clear as day, selling out to the very slime she'd spent her career trying to bury. "Nick," she said, her voice low, trembling. "Tell me this ain't real." He blinked, then laughed a nervous, jagged sound. "What ain't real?" "Come on, Mia, we're in the middle of..." "Shut up." She stepped closer, her heels clicking sharp against the floor. "I heard you. On tape. With Victor. Taking his dirty money." The crowd went quiet, the jazz fading into an awkward hum. Nick's face froze, that perfect mask slipping just enough for her to see the panic underneath. He grabbed her arm, pulling her toward the edge of the platform, away from the mic. "Babe, listen, let's talk after. Don't ruin this." "Ruin what?" she snapped, yanking free. "Our marriage? Your campaign? Or the fact that you've been lying to my face for God knows how long?" "Mia, please." His voice dropped, pleading now. "It's not what you think. I had to play the game. Chicago's a machine, you know that. I did it for us." "For us?" She laughed, bitter and loud, the sound cutting through the wind. "You sold your soul to Victor Salazar for us? The guy I spent a year trying to take down? Jesus, Nick, I thought you were better than this." He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. The priest coughed awkwardly into the mic. Folks, let's give the happy couple a moment." "Happy?" Mia whirled around, snatching the mic from his hand. The feedback screeched, making half the crowd wince. "There's nothing happy about this. You want to know why?" "Mia." Don't. Nick lunged for her, but she sidestepped, holding the mic like a weapon. "This man," she said, her voice booming across the rooftop, "your golden boy, your next mayor, he's a fraud. I've got him on tape taking bribes from Salazar Construction. The same outfit that's been screwing over this city for years. And he thought he could marry me to shut me up." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Helen's face went white, her wine glass trembling in her hand. Sophie's eyes widened, frosting still smeared on her fingers. Victor, leaning against the bar, just smirked like he'd seen this movie before and knew the ending. Nick grabbed her shoulder, hissing, "Mia, stop. You're throwing everything away." She shook him off, her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. "No, Nick. You did that the second you took that money." She raised the mic again, staring out at the sea of stunned faces. "This wedding's over." And then she threw it hard. The mic hit the floor with a metallic clang, rolling to a stop near the edge of the platform. The sound echoed like a gunshot, final and brutal. The crowd erupted into chaos shouts, whispers, phones whipping out to record the meltdown of the decade. Mia didn't wait to see the fallout. She turned, her dress swishing around her ankles, and bolted for the emergency exit. The stairwell was cold, the kind of damp chill that seeps into your bones. Her heels clattered on the metal steps, each thud a beat in the rhythm of her escape. She fumbled for her phone, hands shaking, and pulled up the audio file. Her thumb hovered over the Twitter app, her lifeline, her weapon. She typed fast, "Nick Delaney's dirty. Here's the proof." Hashtag Chicago Cold Feet attached the file. Hit send. The upload bar crawled, then dinged. Done. She leaned against the wall, breath ragged, as the first notifications flooded in retweets, likes, comments. The truth was out there now, screaming across Chicago louder than any rooftop jazz band. She pushed through the exit door into the night, the wind hitting her like a slap. Lake Michigan stretched out ahead, dark and endless, the city lights dancing on its surface. Her veil caught one last gust and tore free, fluttering off into the black. Mia stood there, alone, her white dress stained with sweat and betrayal, and let the cold sink in. She just burned her whole damn life to the ground. And it felt good. Hey, Chicago just got a whole lot hotter, didn't it? If you're hooked on Mia's wild ride, smash that subscribe button and drop a comment. Would you walk away from your own wedding like she did? Let's talk about it. Mia stood on the edge of Lakeshore Drive, the wind clawing at her dress like it wanted to rip the last shred of that fairy tale night off her. The Hancock Center loomed behind, its glass walls glowing like a smug bastard who just watched her life implode. Her phone was blowing up pings and buzzes nonstop, like a damn slot machine on a winning streak. She didn't need to look to know what was happening. That audio clip she dropped on Twitter was spreading faster than a Southside wildfire. Hashtag Chicago Cold Feet was trending #1, and half the city was probably glued to their screens, jaws on the floor. She finally glanced down. The notifications were a mess, retweets in the thousands, comments ranging from "You're a queen, Mia," to "What a psycho bitch." Some rando had already made a meme of her nailing the mic drop, captioned, "When you find out he's cheating and corrupt." She snorted despite herself. Chicago didn't mess around. Her chest still heaved from the rundown 94 flights of stairs, heels and all. The cold bit into her bare arms, but she barely felt it. Adrenaline was one hell of a drug. She just torched her wedding, her relationship, and probably her career in one fell swoop. And Nick, that lying son of a bitch, was up there right now, probably spinning some bullshit story to save his ass. Her phone rang, cutting through the chaos. Lena's name flashed on the screen. Mia swiped to answer, pressing it to her ear. "Girl, you better have a damn good reason for sending me that tape 2 minutes before I do." Lena's voice crackled through, sharp and fast, like she'd downed 3 Red Bulls. "Mia, you just blew up the internet and maybe your life. Where the hell are you?" "Lake Shore." Staring at the water, wondering if I should jump in and call it a day. "Don't you dare. You're a freaking legend right now. Twitter's losing its mind, half the city's calling you a hero. The other half thinks you're a homewrecker. Nick's trending too, but not in a good way." Mia kicked a pebble into the street, watching it skitter toward the curb. "Good. Let him squirm. What's he saying?" "Hold up, I'm pulling up the live stream." A pause, then Lena's laugh barked through the phone. "Oh, this is gold. He's up there with his mom, looking like a deer in headlights. Says the tape's fake, some deepfake conspiracy to tank his campaign. Victor Salazar's standing right next to him, nodding like a damn bobblehead." "Victor." Mia's jaw tightened. That sleazy bastard head of Salazar Construction, the guy she'd spent a year digging into for her big expose. Faulty buildings, bribed inspectors, families displaced in the South Side, all tied to his greasy hands. She thought she'd buried him with that story, but apparently he just slithered right back into the game. And her Nick had been in his pocket the whole time. "Yeah, Victor," Lena said, smooth as ever. "Bet he's loving this, watching you and Nick crash and burn while he sips champagne." Mia's hands balled into fists, the satin of her dress creaking under her grip. "I should have known. Nick swore he was clean when I asked him about Salazar last year. Looked me dead in the eye and lied. Men," Lena snorted, "they'll sell their soul for a buck and a pat on the back. Speaking of, you need to get off the street. People are gonna start hunting you down, reporters, fans, maybe worse." "Worse? Victor's not the type to let this slide, Mia. You just painted a target on your back." Mia's stomach twisted, but she shoved it down. "Fine. Where are you?" "My place. South Loop. Get your ass over here, I've got coffee and a laptop ready." "We're not done yet." "On my way." Mia hung up, shoving the phone back into her pocket. She glanced up at the Hancock one last time, its lights mocking her, then turned south and started walking. No cab, no Uber, just her and the night, the sound of her heels clicking against the pavement like a countdown. By the time she hit Lena's cramped apartment, the city was in full meltdown mode. Lena yanked the door open before Mia could knock, her wild curls bouncing as she waved her inside. "Get in here, superstar. You're a walking headline." The place smelled like burnt coffee and old pizza, a mix that screamed Lena louder than her neon green laptop glowing on the couch. She was 29, wiry as hell, with a tattoo of a skull on her forearm and a rap sheet from her hacking days that'd make a cop blush. She'd been Mia's ride or die since their days at the Tribune, back when they were both broke and chasing scoops. Mia flopped onto the couch, kicking off her heels. "I'm a mess, Lena. What the hell did I just do?" "You did what you always do, dropped a truth bomb and let the chips fall." Lena shoved a chipped mug of coffee into her hands, then plopped down next to her, pulling up Twitter. "Look at this, 50K retweets in an hour. You're viral, babe." Mia sipped the coffee, wincing at the bitterness. "Great. So I'm famous for being the chick who ditched her own wedding. Better than being the chick who married a crook." Lena scrolled through the feed, her fingers flying. "Nick's press conference is still going. Wanna watch? Do I have a choice?" "Nope." Lena hit play on a live stream from WGN. Nick's face filled the screen, his tie loosened, sweat beading on his forehead. He stood at a podium on the Hancock rooftop, Helen hovering like a vulture behind him. The crowd had thinned, but the cameras were still rolling. "I want to assure Chicago," Nick said, his voice steady but strained, "that this so-called evidence is a fabrication. A desperate attempt by my opponents to derail my campaign. I've never taken a dime from anyone, not Victor Salazar. Not anybody. Mia's mug froze halfway to her mouth. He's lying through his teeth. Oscar-worthy, Lena agreed. Check out Salazar, though. The camera panned to Victor, leaning against the railing with a glass of bourbon in hand. He was mid-40s, all sharp cheekbones and tailored swagger, the kind of guy who'd charm your grandma while picking her pocket. He caught the camera's eye and flashed a smile, slow, deliberate, like he was daring Mia to keep swinging. Smug bastard, Mia muttered. He knows he's untouchable. Not if we've got anything to say about it. Lena's eyes gleamed, that hacker spark flaring up. I didn't send you that tape for kicks, Mia. I've been digging into Salazar for weeks, found that audio buried in a server he thought was secure. There's more where it came from. More? Mia sat up, the coffee sloshing in her mug. Like what? Like enough to bury him and Nick. But we need to move fast. Salazar's got people who'd kill to keep this quiet. Before Mia could respond, her phone buzzed again. Not Lena this time, a blocked number. She hesitated, then opened the text. Meet me at the Bean tonight. 11 p.m. You're not alone. She showed it to Lena, who frowned. Creepy. Friend or foe? No clue. Mia checked the time, 9:45 p.m. Guess I'll find out. You're not going alone, Lena said, already grabbing her jacket. If this is a trap, I'm not letting you walk into it without backup. Mia managed a small smile, the first real one all night. What would I do without you? Crash and burn, probably. Lena tossed her a hoodie. Put this on, wedding dress ain't exactly incognito. An hour later, Mia stood under the silver curves of Cloud Gate, aka the Bean in Millennium Park. The city was quieter here, the lake's chill seeping through her borrowed hoodie. Lena hung back near a bench, pretending to scroll her phone but keeping one eye on Mia. The Bean reflected the skyline in warped, dreamy streaks, and for a second, Mia let herself breathe. Footsteps crunched behind her. She turned, tense, and saw a figure step into the light. Sophie Delaney, Nick's 19-year-old sister, her blonde hair tucked under a Cubs cap. She looked nervous, clutching a phone like it was a lifeline. Sophie? Mia's brow furrowed. What are you doing here? Sophie glanced around, then stepped closer, her voice barely above a whisper. I sent the text. I had to talk to you away from Nick, away from Mom. Talk about what? Nick. Sophie's eyes darted to the shadows, then back to Mia. He's not who you think he is. Not all bad, I mean, Victor's got him trapped, has for years. I know stuff, Mia. Stuff that could help you. Mia's pulse quickened. Help me how? Take Victor down. Sophie swallowed hard. But you've got to trust me. Mia studied her, those wide, earnest eyes, so different from Nick's polished charm. Could she trust a Delaney after everything? Before she could answer, headlights flashed in the distance. A black SUV rolling slow down Michigan Avenue. Too slow. Lena, Mia called, voice tight. We've got company. Lena was up in a flash, grabbing Mia's arm. Time to bounce, ladies. Sophie, you're with us. The three of them bolted into the night, the SUV's engine growling behind them. Whatever Sophie knew, it was big and someone didn't want it getting out. The air in Millennium Park was thick with that late-night chill, the kind that creeps up your spine and makes every shadow look like trouble. Mia, Lena, and Sophie ducked behind a row of bushes near the Bean, their breaths puffing out in quick, white bursts. The black SUV idled on Michigan Avenue, its headlights slicing through the dark like a predator sizing up its prey. Mia's heart hammered against her ribs. She didn't know who was in that car, but she'd bet her last dollar it had something to do with Victor Salazar. Who the hell drives around at 11 p.m. stalking a giant metal bean? Lena whispered, her voice sharp but shaky. She crouched low, her green laptop tucked under her arm like a shield. Someone who doesn't want me talking to Sophie, Mia said, glancing at the girl beside her. Sophie's face was pale, her Cubs cap pulled low, but her eyes were wide and locked on the SUV. She looked like a kid who just realized the monster under the bed was real. They're Victor's guys, Sophie said, barely audible. I've seen that car before outside Nick's campaign office. He's got people everywhere. Great, Lena muttered. So we're dealing with a mob boss in a three-piece suit. Mia, you sure know how to pick M. Shut up, Mia hissed, but there was no heat in it. She peeked over the bushes. The SUV's engine growled, then cut off. Two figures stepped out, big guys, built like linebackers, their faces hidden under hoods. One of them scanned the park, his hand slipping inside his jacket. Mia's stomach dropped. They're packing. Time to move, Lena said, grabbing Sophie's arm. Back toward the Art Institute, more cover. They bolted, keeping low, weaving through the park's empty paths. Mia's hoodie snagged on a branch, ripping a hole, but she didn't stop. Her bare feet, still raw from ditching her wedding heels, slapped against the cold pavement. Every step a jolt of pain she ignored. Behind them, footsteps echoed, heavy and deliberate. The goons weren't sprinting, but they didn't need to. They knew the terrain, and they were closing in. They hit the edge of the park, ducking behind a stone wall near the museum. Sophie was panting, her hands trembling. I'm sorry, Mia. I didn't mean to drag you into this. Too late for sorry, Mia said, catching her breath. What's Victor got on Nick that's worth all this? Sophie hesitated, then pulled out her phone. It's not just money. It's Dad. Her voice cracked. He died 5 years ago, car accident, they said. But Nick found out it wasn't an accident. Victor had him taken out, some deal Dad wouldn't sign off on. Nick's been trying to get free ever since, but Victor's got too much dirt. Mia stared at her, the pieces clicking into place. So Nick's not just a sellout, he's a hostage? Kinda. Sophie swiped at her eyes. He wanted to tell you, Mia. Swear to God. But Victor threatened me, said if Nick stepped out of line, I'd be next. Jesus, Lena muttered, peeking over the wall. And I thought my family was messed up. Mia's mind raced. Nick a victim? It didn't erase the lies, the betrayal, but it painted a different picture, one she wasn't sure she wanted to see. Why didn't he fight back? He tried, Sophie said. Started digging into Victor's files. But Mom Helen, she shut him down. She's in on it, Mia. Has been since Dad died. Helen? Mia's voice rose, then dropped fast as Lena shushed her. Your mom's working with Salazar? Sophie nodded, miserable. She thinks it's the only way to keep us safe. Nick's campaign, the money, it's all Victor's leash. Before Mia could process that bombshell, a shadow loomed over the wall. One of the goons, 6 foot something, with a scar cutting across his cheek, stared down at them, a gun glinting in his hand. Evening, ladies, Lena yelped, shoving Sophie behind her. Mia stood, hands up, her pulse roaring in her ears. Look, man, we don't want trouble. Too late for that, Scarface said, his voice gravelly. Boss says you've got a big mouth, Carter. Time to shut it. He raised the gun, but Mia was already moving, instinct kicking in from years of dodging shady sources in dark alleys. She grabbed a loose brick from the wall and chucked it, nailing him square in the chest. He stumbled, cursing, and Lena took the opening, tackling Sophie to the ground as Mia bolted toward the street. Run! Mia yelled, but the second goon was on her fast, his meaty hand clamping around her arm. She twisted, driving her elbow into his gut, but he barely flinched. He yanked her back, slamming her against the wall hard enough to knock the wind out of her. Nice try, he growled, breath hot against her face. Salazar's got a message, keep quiet, or your fish food in the lake. Tell him to shove it, Mia spat, kicking at his shin. He grunted, tightening his grip, when headlights flared behind them. A beat-up Toyota screeched to a stop, and Lena leaned out the driver's window, Sophie wide-eyed in the passenger seat. Get in, dumbass, Lena shouted, revving the engine. The goon loosened his hold just enough surprise, maybe, and Mia wrenched free, diving into the back seat as Lena floored it. Tires squealed, and the car peeled out, leaving the goons in a cloud of exhaust. Mia collapsed against the seat, chest heaving, as Sophie twisted around, tears streaking her face. You okay? Sophie asked, voice small. Peachy, Mia said, rubbing her bruised arm. Where'd you learn to hotwire a car, Lena? Misspent youth, Lena grinned, glancing in the rearview. We're clear for now. They ditched the Toyota a few blocks from Lena's place, hoofing it back through the South Loop's empty streets. Inside, Mia crashed onto the couch, her adrenaline crashing with her. Sophie curled up in an armchair, hugging her knees, while Lena pulled up her laptop, fingers flying. "Those assholes trashed your apartment while we were gone," Lena said, nodding at the mess, overturned lamp, papers everywhere. "Left this tape to the door." She handed Mia a note. "Next time we don't miss." Mia crumpled it, tossing it aside. "Victor's not playing around." "Nope," Lena said, pulling up a grainy feed. "Check this security cam from your building. Caught M on tape. 2 guys, same build as our pals at the Bean." "Proof," Mia said, sitting up. "We can use this." "Maybe," Lena cautioned. "But Victor's got deeper pockets than God. He'll bury it unless we hit him harder." Sophie piped up, hesitant. "There's more proof. Nick's got files, emails, recordings. He hid them somewhere Victor can't find. I can get them." Mia met her eyes, searching for a lie. "Didn't find one. You sure about this, Soph? You're in deep now." "I'm sure," Sophie said, straightening. "Nick's my brother, but Victor's a monster. I want him gone." "Okay," Mia nodded. "Then we're a team." Lena smirked. "Team Screw Salazar." "I like it." They barely had time to breathe before Mia's phone buzzed again, Twitter this time. She opened it and her blood ran cold. A video uploaded 10 minutes ago was racking up views fast. It showed her in a dark alley, taking a stack of cash from a guy in a suit. The caption, "Mia Carter's the real fraud. Paid to smear Delaney. Hashtag fake news." "It's fake," Mia said, voice shaking. "Victor's hitting back." "Deepfake," Lena confirmed, squinting at the screen. "Good one, too. He's turning the city against you." Mia stared at the video, her fake face smirking as she pocketed the cash. The comments were brutal. Knew she was a liar. Poor Nick. Lock her up. Her truth, the one she'd risked everything for, was slipping away. "We're screwed," she whispered. "Not yet," Lena said, cracking her knuckles. "They want to play dirty? We play dirtier." Sophie nodded, fierce now. "Let's take him down." Mia forced a breath, steeling herself. Victor had drawn first blood. Time to hit back. Phew. Things just got real messy. Huh? If you're loving the Chicago Showdown, smash that subscribe button and drop a comment. Would you trust Sophie? Or is she hiding something? Let me know what you think. The Green Mill smelled like stale beer and jazz, a smoky, sweaty hug of a place tucked into uptown, far enough from the South Loop chaos to let Mia breathe. It was past midnight, and the neon sign outside buzzed like a tired old friend. Inside, a sax player wailed a slow tune, the notes curling around the dim room like smoke. Mia slid into a booth near the back, her hoodie up, nursing a whiskey she didn't plan to finish. Lena and Sophie were back at the apartment, digging into Nick's hidden files, or trying to, with Lena's laptop on the fritz. Mia needed air, needed space to think after Victor's deepfake sucker punch. Her phone sat on the table, screen dark. She'd muted it after the video hit 100K views. Chicago was eating her alive, half the city calling her a fraud, the other half still cheering her mic drop. The truth was drowning in noise, and Victor was laughing all the way to the bank. She rubbed her temples, the bruise on her arm throbbing from that goon's grip at the Bean. She was in over her head, and she knew it. The booth creaked as someone slid in across from her. She looked up, hand tightening on the glass, and met a pair of tired gray eyes under a mop of salt and pepper hair. The guy was late 40s, broad-shouldered, with a leather jacket that had seen better days and a 5 o'clock shadow that said he hadn't slept in a week. He set a beer on the table, leaning back like he owned the place. "Mia Carter," he said, voice rough but steady. "You're a hard woman to track down." She tensed. "And you're a dumbass if you think I'm in the mood for company." "Who are you?" "Detective Ray Coleman, CPD. He flashed a badge, worn, scratched, but legit. "Heard you've been stirring up trouble downtown. Thought I'd buy you a drink." "I've got one," she said, nodding at the whiskey. "And I don't talk to cops unless they've got a warrant or a damn good story." "Which is it?" He smirked, taking a swig of his beer. "How about both?" "No warrant, but I've been after Victor Salazar for years. You just handed me the best lead I've had in a decade with that tape." Mia's eyes narrowed. "You're late to the party, Coleman. That tape's out there, and Salazar's spinning it like I'm the bad guy. You got anything useful, or you just here to waste my time? Ray leaned in, lowering his voice. I've got a file on Salazar thick enough to choke a horse, bribes, blackmail, a dozen bodies tied to his projects. But no proof that sticks. You've got the key, Mia. That audio's a crack in his armor, and I want to help you bust it wide open. She studied him, the lines on his face, the way his jaw tightened when he said Salazar's name. He wasn't bullshitting, there was history there. Why should I trust you? Cops in this city don't exactly scream hero. Half of them are on someone's payroll. Not me, he said, sharp. I've been clean 20 years on the force. Salazar's why my partner's 6 feet under got too close. Ended up in a ditch off I-94. I've been chasing that bastard ever since. Mia sipped her whiskey, letting the burn settle her nerves. So this is personal. Damn right it is. But it's bigger than me or you. Salazar's got tentacles in the CPD, City Hall, even the damn mayor's office. Your boy Nick's just a puppet in the machine. Nick's not my boy anymore. She snapped, the words cutting deeper than she'd admit. And if you're so hot on Salazar, why haven't you nailed him yet? No smoking gun, Ray said, shrugging. Until now. That tape's a start, but we need more. I've got leads off the book stuff. You've got the nose for a story. We team up, we can take him down. Mia leaned back, crossing her arms. What's in it for me? I'm already public enemy #1 thanks to that deepfake. Clear your name, he said. And maybe save the city from a guy who'd sell his own mother for $1. You in? She didn't answer right away. Trusting a cop felt like handing a loaded gun to a stranger. But Ray's eyes held a fire she recognized, the same one she saw in the mirror when a scoop was close. Fine, she said finally. But you screw me over, Coleman, and I'll bury you deeper than Salazar. Deal. He grinned, clinking his beer against her glass. First stop, Nick's old campaign office. I've got a hunch there's dirt there Salazar missed. An hour later, they were creeping through the back alley of a squat brick building in the Loop, the kind of place that screamed tax write-off. Nick's campaign HQ was dark, the windows papered over with faded Delaney for mayor posters. Ray picked the lock with a flick of his wrist, the door creaking open into a musty tomb of desks and coffee stains. Subtle, Mia muttered, stepping inside. Her phone flashlight cut through the gloom, catching dust motes and stacks of unopened mail. What are we looking for? Anything, Ray said, rifling through a filing cabinet. Nick was sloppy, kept paper trails when he should have gone digital. Salazar's too arrogant to double-check. Mia moved to Nick's desk, her fingers brushing the wood where he'd sat, plotting his rise while lying to her face. A pang hit her chest, anger. Sure, but something softer too. She shoved it down, popping open a drawer. Pens, gum, a half-empty bottle of Jim Beam. Then, under a stack of flyers, a manila envelope unmarked, sealed tight. Ray, she called, holding it up. Jackpot? He crossed the room, tearing it open. Inside were printouts, emails, grainy photos, a handwritten note in Nick's scrawl. Ray skimmed them, his face hardening. Holy shit. This is it. What? Mia leaned in, scanning the pages. The emails were between Nick and Victor, dates, amounts, promises of discretion. The photos showed a car wreck, twisted metal on a snowy highway. The note read, Dad knew. V set it up. Need proof, H won't help. Dad? Mia's voice caught. Sophie said Victor killed their father. This backs it up. More than that, Ray said, tapping the emails. Nick was trying to gather evidence to take Salazar down. Looks like he got cold feet when Victor pushed back. Mia's head spun. Nick a whistleblower? It didn't fit the liar she'd left at the altar, or did it? Helen's in here too, she said, pointing at the note. H won't help. She knew? Looks like it, Ray said grimly. Mama Delaney's been playing both sides. Keeps Nick in line, keeps Victor happy. Son of a bitch, Mia whispered. She'd never liked Helen, too cold, too calculated, but this? Covering up a murder? Her hands shook as she stuffed the papers back into the envelope. We've got him, Ray. This ties Victor to a hit. Not yet, he said, pocketing the envelope. We need corroboration, witnesses, records. But this is a hell of a start. A noise cut through the silence, a low rumble outside. Mia froze, her flashlight catching the flicker of headlights through the window. Company. Ray cursed, pulling her toward the back door. Move! They slipped out just as the front door banged open, heavy boots stomping inside. Mia glimpsed two figures, same linebacker builds, from the beam before Ray yanked her into the alley. They pressed against the wall, breaths held, as voices echoed from the office. Boss said check the desk, one grunted. She's been here, smells like whiskey and bad decisions. Find it fast, the other snapped. Salazar wants her shut down tonight. Mia's blood ran cold. Ray's hand tightened on her arm, his whisper barely audible. They're not playing anymore. We need to get this to my guy at the precinct off the books. She nodded, her mind racing. Victor was closing in, and the truth, the real truth, was slipping through her fingers again. But now she had Ray, and a stack of paper that could burn Salazar's empire to the ground. Game on. The alley behind Nick's campaign office was a black hole of shadows and dumpster stink. The kind of place where you'd expect to find a stray cat or a drug deal, not two people running for their lives. Mia's sneakers skidded on wet pavement as she and Ray bolted from the back door, the rumble of Victor's goons tearing through the office behind them. Her lungs burned, the envelope of evidence tucked tight under her arm like it was the last piece of her soul she had left. Ray's flashlight bobbed ahead, cutting through the dark as he led her toward a side street. Keep moving, he hissed, his voice tight. My car's 2 blocks up, unmarked. Safe. Safe? Mia panted, dodging a pile of trash bags. Nothing's safe with Salazar's guys on our ass. Just trust me, he shot back, glancing over his shoulder. The thud of boots echoed from the alley's mouth too close. Mia's gut twisted. She trusted Nick, and look where that got her. But Ray was all she had right now, and that envelope was her ticket to nailing Victor. She pushed harder, legs screaming, until they hit the street. Ray's car was a beat-up Ford sedan, parked under a flickering streetlight. He yanked the driver's door open, waving her in. Passenger side go. Mia dove in, slamming the door as Ray gunned the engine. The Ford lurched forward, tires squealing, just as the 2 goons burst out of the alley. She caught a glimpse of Scarface, the one she'd bricked at the bean, raising his gun, but Ray floored it, weaving through traffic. Horns blared, headlights flashed, and Mia gripped the envelope tighter, her knuckles white. They're tailing us, she said, twisting to check the rear view. A black SUV, same one from the park, swung out behind them, gaining fast. Hold on, Ray muttered, jerking the wheel. The car swerved onto Lakeshore Drive, the lake a dark smear on their right, the city's glow blurring past on the left. Mia's stomach flipped as he pushed the speedometer past 70. The old Ford rattling like it might shake apart. You sure you're not leading me into a trap? She half joked, but her voice was shaky. Ray didn't answer, his jaw locked, eyes flicking between the road and the mirror. The SUV was closing in, its headlights glaring like angry eyes. Ray? She pressed, unease creeping up her spine. Quiet, he snapped, too sharp. He yanked the wheel again, cutting across 2 lanes to an exit ramp. The car jolted, tires screeching, and Mia braced herself against the dash. They shot down a narrow road, warehouses looming on either side, old shipping yards near the lake, abandoned and creepy as hell. Where are we going? She demanded, but Ray didn't look at her. He pulled into a gravel lot behind a rusted-out building, the engine cutting off with a groan. Silence hit hard, broken only by the distant lap of waves against the shore. Ray, talk to me, Mia said, her voice rising. What's the plan? He turned to her then, and something in his eyes, cold, hard, made her blood freeze. Plans changed, he said, pulling his gun from its holster and leveling it at her chest. Mia's breath stopped. What the hell? Get out, he said, his tone flat, slow. Keep your hands where I can see 'em. You're kidding, she said, but her hands were already up, trembling. You're with Salazar? Not with him, Ray said, his voice cracking just enough to show he wasn't proud of it. But he's got my daughter, Mia, my kid. Said he'd let her go if I handed you over. I didn't have a choice. There's always a choice, she spat, fury boiling over the fear. You're a cop, Ray. You're supposed to protect people, not sell them out. Don't lecture me, he growled, stepping out and circling to her side, gun steady. Now, Mia opened the door, moving slow, her mind racing for an out. The gravel crunched under her feet as she stepped into the cold, the lake's damp chill sinking into her bones. The SUV rolled up behind them, its engine a low growl. Scarface and his buddy climbed out, smirking like they'd won the lottery. "Good work, Coleman," Scarface said, holstering his gun. "Boss'll be pleased." Ray didn't look at him, his eyes locked on Mia, guilt flickering there. "Just take her and go. Tell Salazar we're square." "Oh, we'll take her," the second goon said, cracking his knuckles. "But square? Nah. Boss don't like loose ends." Mia's heart sank as Scarface pulled his gun again, this time aiming at Ray. "Wait," she started, but the shot rang out sharp and final. Ray crumpled, blood blooming across his chest, his gun clattering to the gravel. He hit the ground hard, eyes wide, a choked gasp escaping before he went still. "Ray!" Mia screamed, lunging toward him, but Scarface grabbed her, slamming her against the car. Pain exploded across her back, and she tasted blood where her lips split. "No heroics," he snarled, zip-tying her wrists tight enough to bite. "Boss wants a word." They dragged her to the SUV, shoving her into the back seat. The engine roared to life, and the city shrank behind them as they sped toward the lakefront. Mia's mind spun. Ray was dead. The envelope was still in the Ford, and she was alone with two thugs who'd kill her without blinking. She'd trusted the wrong guy, and it had cost her everything. The ride ended at a warehouse off Calumet Avenue, a hulking skeleton of steel and broken windows squatting by the water. The goons hauled her inside, the air thick with rust and mildew. They tied her to a chair in the middle of the empty space, her wrists chafing against the plastic ties. Footsteps echoed slow, deliberate, and Victor Salazar stepped into the light. He was all polish and poison, his suit pristine despite the hour, a glass of bourbon dangling from his hand. His dark hair was slicked back, and that damn smile sharp as a blade curved his lips. "Mia Carter," he said like he was greeting an old friend. "You've been a busy girl." "Go to hell," she spat, straining against the ties. "Been there," he said, sipping his drink. "Didn't like the view. Though you're a problem I can fix." He nodded to Scarface, who handed him a phone. Victor tapped the screen, and the deepfake video played her fake self smirking as she took the cash. "Chicago's eating this up," he said. "By morning you'll be a ghost. No one'll believe a word you say." "It's a lie," she said, voice hoarse. "You can't bury the truth forever." "Can't I?" He stepped closer, crouching to her level, his breath sour with bourbon. "Nick begged me to spare you. Too bad he's not here to see how this ends." Mia's chest tightened. "What did you do to him?" Victor chuckled, standing. "Nothing yet. He's still useful. Though you're just a little fish who swam too deep. Time to cut bait." He turned to Scarface. "Make it quick. Dump her in the lake." Scarface grinned, pulling a knife from his belt. But before he could move, a crash split the air glass, shattering somewhere in the warehouse. Victor spun, barking. What the hell was that? Lights flared outside, headlights cutting through the broken windows. A car horn blared, sharp and insistent, and Mia's heart leapt. She knew that sound. Lena's junker Toyota, the one they'd ditched earlier. Scarface cursed, drawing his gun. But the side door burst open, and Lena stormed in, a crowbar swinging in her hands. "Back off, asshole!" Lena yelled, cracking the crowbar against Scarface's arm. He howled, dropping the gun, and Sophie darted in behind her, a can of pepper spray shaking in her grip. She aimed at the second goon, unloading a cloud of it into his face. He screamed, clawing at his eyes, and Mia seized the chaos, rocking her chair until it tipped, slamming her onto the floor. Victor bolted for the exit, shouting, "Deal with them." But Lena was on Mia in a flash, slicing the zip ties with a pocket knife. "You good?" "Barely," Mia gasped, scrambling up. "How'd you find me?" "Tracked your phone," Lena said, grinning despite the mess. "Hackers got a hack." Sophie grabbed Mia's arm, tears streaking her face. "We couldn't let them take you." The goons were recovering, Scarface clutching his arm, the other still coughing from the spray, but Mia didn't wait. "Let's go." They ran for the Toyota, piling in as Lena floored it. The warehouse shrank in the rear view, Victor's curses fading into the night. Mia slumped in the back seat, adrenaline crashing, her hands shaking as Sophie clung to her. "We're not safe yet," Lena said, eyes on the road. "Salazar's gonna come harder now." Mia nodded, her voice steel. "Then we hit him first." The Toyota limped along a potholed road in South Side, its engine coughing like it was begging for mercy. Mia slumped in the back seat, her wrists stinging from the zip ties Victor's goons had sliced off her just hours ago. Her head throbbed, a dull ache from the warehouse showdown, and her hoodie was damp with sweat and lake air. Lena gripped the wheel, her jaw tight, weaving through the dark streets like she could outrun the mess they'd just escaped. Sophie sat beside Mia, her knees pulled up, her face pale under the faint glow of passing streetlights. The silence was suffocating. No one wanted to say it, but they all knew. Victor Salazar wasn't done with them. Lena finally spoke, her voice rough. "My place is toast. Those bastards will be waiting. We need a new hideout." "Where?" Mia asked, rubbing her bruised arm. "Chicago's starting to feel like a damn mousetrap." "Got a spot," Lena said, flicking her eyes to the rear view. "Motel off 63rd, shady as hell, cash only. Used it back when I was dodging feds in my hacking days." "Good enough," Mia said, her throat dry. "Sophie, you holding up?" Sophie nodded, clutching her phone like it was a lifeline. "Yeah. But I've got something to tell you. About Nick." Mia's gut twisted. "What now? He's already a liar. How much worse can it get?" "It's not like that," Sophie said, her voice small but firm. "Not here, though. When we're safe." The motel was a relic, a sagging two-story dump with chipped paint and a vacancy sign flickering like it was on its last legs. The parking lot was a graveyard of cigarette butts and broken bottles, and the night air carried the faint tang of exhaust and despair. Lena handed a wad of crumpled bills to the clerk, a guy with a stained shirt who didn't even glance up from his TikTok scroll, and snagged a key to room 12. Inside, the room was a time warp. A lumpy bed with a faded quilt, a TV that looked like it hadn't worked since the 90s, and curtains that smelled like mothballs. Mia locked the door, slid the chain into place, and collapsed onto the bed, exhaustion hitting her like a brick. Lena tossed her jacket over a rickety chair and cracked her knuckles. "All right, sophomore, time's up. What's this big reveal about your brother?" Sophie hesitated, then pulled her phone from her pocket, her hands trembling. "It's not just about him, it's everything. Victor, Mom, the whole damn mess." She tapped the screen, and Nick's voice spilled out, low and urgent, cutting through the stale air like a knife. "Sophie, if you're hearing this, I'm either screwed or gone. I've been recording this for weeks, trying to claw my way out of Victor's grip. He's got me trapped, money, threats, Dad's death. I found proof he staged the crash, sophomore emails, a burner phone he used to call it in. Mom knows she's been in on it since the start, said it was to keep us safe, but it's all about her power. I wanted to tell Mia, I swear, but Victor got wind of it, said he'd hurt you if I opened my mouth. Everything's stashed at the lake house lockbox under the floorboards in the living room. If I don't make it, get it to Mia. She's the only one I trust to take this bastard down." The recording ended, static crackling in its wake. Mia sat there, frozen, her breath caught somewhere deep in her chest. Nick's words ricocheted in her skull. "She's the only one I trust." She'd spent days hating him, picturing him as the sleazy politician who'd played her for a fool. But this was a sucker punch she hadn't braced for. Lena let out a slow whistle, breaking the stunned quiet. "Well, shit. Golden Boy had some guts after all." "He was protecting me," Sophie said, her voice breaking as tears welled up. "Mom sold us out, Mia. Nick's been dying inside for years, but he kept going for me. For you." Mia's hands balled into fists, the rough fabric of the quilt creasing under her grip. "Protecting me? He lied to my face, sophomore. 2 years, 2 damn years, and he couldn't say a word?" "He was terrified," Sophie said, wiping her cheeks with her sleeve. "Victor's got people everywhere, cops, staff, even bugs in our phones. Nick thought if he told you, you'd dig in like you always do, and Victor'd come for you next." "She's not wrong," Lena said, leaning against the wall. "You're a pit bull with a story, Mia. Look where it's got us, running from goons in a shitty motel." Mia stood, pacing the cramped room, her sneakers scuffing the worn carpet. Her mind was a mess. Nick a hero? A coward? Both? She saw him at the altar, that nervous smile, the way he'd squeezed her hand like he was holding on for dear life. Had he been shielding her all along? The hate she'd clung to was cracking, letting something raw bleed through regret, confusion, maybe even a flicker of the love she'd buried. "Where's this lake house?" she asked, her voice hoarse. "If Nick left proof, we need it." "Waukegan," Sophie said, sniffing. "Hour north, maybe less if we push it. It's been empty since Dad died. Mom won't touch it." "Too many skeletons," Lena said, smirking despite the tension. "All right, crew, we've got a plan. But we're sitting ducks here. Salazar's gonna come hard after that warehouse stunt." Mia nodded, her jaw clenching. "Then we move fast. Get the files, blow this wide open. Nick wanted me to finish this. I'm gonna damn well do it." Sophie managed a shaky smile, fierce through the tears. "He'd believe in you." "Don't," Mia snapped, sharper than she meant. "He's still a liar. A good guy who screwed up doesn't wipe that slate clean." "Fair enough," Lena said, grabbing the Toyota keys. "Let's hit the road before Victor's dogs catch our scent." They piled back into the car, the night swallowing them as they peeled onto I-94. Mia stared out the window, Lake Michigan a black abyss beside them, her reflection a ghost in the glass. Nick's voice looped in her head, "She's the only one I trust." She wanted to scream at him, shake him, but the anger was softening, and it scared her. What if she'd been wrong? The lake house crouched among pines like a forgotten memory, its shingles gray and peeling under the moonlight. The air was sharp with pine and damp earth, the lake a silver shimmer through the trees. Lena cut the headlights 100 yards out, coasting to a stop behind a thicket. They crept up on foot, the gravel crunching too loud in the stillness, every snap of a twig making Mia's nerves jump. "Under the floorboards, right?" Lena whispered, peering through a dusty window. "Hope Nick didn't rig it with some Indiana Jones crap." "He wasn't that clever," Sophie said, a faint laugh cutting her tension. She fished a key from under a loose rock by the back door, the lock clicking open with a groan. They slipped inside, the air thick with dust and ghosts. The cabin was frozen in time, faded plaid couch, a wood stove gone cold, photos of the Delaney family smiling on the walls. Mia's chest tightened at a shot of Nick, maybe 12, gap-toothed and holding a fish. She turned away, following Sophie to the living room. The girl knelt by the fireplace, prying at a loose plank with her nails. "Here," Sophie said, lifting the board. A metal lockbox glinted underneath, rusted but solid. She handed it to Mia, who popped the lid with a creak that echoed in the quiet. Inside were paper stacks of them, emails, bank statements, a USB drive with VS, scrawled in Nick's handwriting. Mia skimmed the top email, from Victor to Helen. "Delaney Sr. won't play ball, crash set for Friday. Keep Nick quiet." Her hands shook, proof, undeniable, of a murder. "Holy hell," Lena breathed, peering over her shoulder. "This is a nuke." "Yeah," Mia said, her voice steel. "Enough to blow Victor's empire to bits." Sophie grabbed the USB. "There's audio to Nick confronting Victor. He said it's all there." A branch snapped outside. Mia's head whipped up, her pulse spiking. "You hear that?" Lena darted to the window, peeking through the blinds. Headlights half a mile out, closing fast. "Salazar," Mia said, shoving the papers back into the box. "He's on to us." "How?" Sophie's voice cracked. "We were careful." "Doesn't matter," Lena said, snatching her crowbar from the car stash. "We're burned. Grab it and go." They bolted for the back door, but the headlights were near now, 2 sets, engines growling like hounds on a scent. Mia clutched the lockbox, her mind racing. This was Nick's legacy, her weapon. No way she was losing it. "Split up," she said, breathless. "Lena, take Sophie, get to the car. I'll draw them off." "Hell no," Lena snapped. "We're a team." "No time," Mia said, shoving the box into Lena's hands. "Go. I'll meet you at the motel." Sophie grabbed her arm, eyes wide. "Mia, don't." "I'll be fine," Mia lied, forcing a grin. "Run." Lena cursed but dragged Sophie into the trees, the lockbox tucked tight. Mia turned the other way, sprinting into the dark, her heart pounding like a war drum. Headlights flared behind her, and she knew she was the bait now, and Victor was coming for blood. Man, that twist hit hard, didn't it? If you're hooked on this roller coaster, smash that subscribe button and drop a comment. Would you forgive Nick after this? Or is it too late? Let's hear your take. The wind tore through Navy Pier like a pissed-off banshee, rattling the Ferris wheel and whipping the lake into a frenzy. It was 3 a.m., the pier a deserted stretch of concrete and shadows, the city's lights a distant hum. Mia stood at the edge, waves crashing below, her hoodie drenched from a mad dash through the pines to shake Victor's goons. She'd lost them barely, but she wanted them here. This was her endgame, her last roll of the dice. Her phone buzzed. Lena's text. Box secure. USB's live on X. Nick's confrontation with V is blowing up. Where you at? Mia fired back. Navy Pier. Bring the cavalry. She chucked the phone into the lake, cutting the cord. No more games, just her, the truth, and Victor's ego. She'd baited him with a burner call. Got your files, Salazar. Navy Pier alone, or they hit every newsroom by sunrise. A lie. Lena had the goods, but Victor wouldn't resist. Headlights sliced the dark, a black Mercedes creeping up. Mia braced herself, hands in her pockets to hide the tremble. Victor stepped out, suit sharp, gun gleaming, his smile a razor in the night. Mia Carter, he called, voice slick. You're a cockroach hard to squash. Takes one to know one. She yelled, wind stealing her breath. You here to talk or shoot? He closed in, stopping 10 feet out, gun loose but ready. Where's my proof? Safe, she bluffed, staring him down. Think I'd carry it? I'm not that dumb. No, he said, smirking. Just dumb enough to think you can win. Chicago's mine, Mia. You're a gnat. Then why re you sweating? She shot back. Scared I've got you cornered? His smile twitched. Let's see. He pulled his phone, scrolling. Mia held her breath. Lena's upload had to be live. His face darkened, Nick's voice booming from the pier's hacked screens. Victor killed, Dad threatened, Sophie proofs out. You bitch, he snarled, tossing the phone and lunging. Mia dodged, but he grabbed her, slamming her against the railing. Pain flared and she kicked his shin, breaking free. He swung the gun up, barrel in her face. Done, he hissed, finger tightening. A figure tackled him. Nick, alive, bruised, fierce, knocking the gun wide. The shot cracked, wild, and they hit the deck, scrapping hard. Mia stumbled back, gasping. Nick, stay down, he shouted, grappling Victor. The bastard elbowed Nick's jaw, breaking free, gun raised. You're dead, Delaney. No. Mia swung a pipe from the ground, cracking Victor's wrist. The gun flew, skittering off. He roared, charging her. But Nick yanked him back, slamming him into the railing. You killed my dad, Nick growled, pounding Victor's face. Threatened my family. Not your wife, Victor spat, blood dripping. She dumped you. Nick's fist smashed his jaw. For this, Mia watched, heart racing, as sirens wailed Lena's backup. Victor shoved Nick, lunging for the edge, dragging him along. Mia screamed as they went over, vanishing into the black water. Nick! She ran to the railing, peering down. Waves churned. Then a hand gripped the edge. Nick, soaked, hauling up. Victor's gone, he rasped, collapsing. Current took him. Cops swarmed, Lena and Sophie sprinting up. Nick grabbed Mia's hand, fading. I'm sorry, babe. Always loved you. Medics rushed in as he slumped, blood pooling. Mia stood, numb, watching them fight to save him. The screens blared Victor's doom. Chicago awake, the truth free. She'd won, but Nick's blood stained the pier, and the wind screamed on. The sky over Chicago was a bruised gray, heavy with the promise of rain. As Mia stood in Mount Carmel Cemetery 3 days later, the wind tugged at her jacket, colder now, slicing through the rows of headstones like it had a score to settle. Nick's grave was fresh, the dirt still loose, a simple marker etched with Nicholas Delaney, 1990-2025. No flowers, no crowd, just her, Lena, and Sophie, the only ones left who'd seen the real him. The funeral had been yesterday, a media circus Mia skipped. She didn't need cameras catching her tears. Her boots sank into the damp grass, hands shoved deep in her pockets. Nick's last words, "always loved you," looped in her head. A ghost she couldn't shake. The medics had fought for him on the pier, but he'd bled out before the ambulance hit the hospital. Internal injuries, they said, too much damage from Victor's last stand. She'd won, but the cost was carved into her chest, a hollow ache that wouldn't quit. Lena leaned against a nearby tree, arms crossed, her usual smirk gone. "You okay, Mia?" "Dumb question, I know. No such thing as okay right now," Mia said, voice rough. "But I'm standing." Sophie knelt by the grave, tracing Nick's name with a trembling finger. She'd cried herself out, her face puffy but dry now. "He'd be glad you finished it," she said, looking up. "Victor's gone. That's what he wanted." "Yeah," Mia said, staring at the stone. "Doesn't feel like winning." "It never does," Lena said, kicking a pebble. "But Chicago's buzzing X is still lit up with hashtag Salazar sinks. Your article dropped this morning, right?" Mia nodded. She'd spent 2 sleepless nights at Lena's new safe house, a friend's loft in Wicker Park, hammering out the story. Every detail. Nick's tapes, Victor's emails, Helen's betrayal, the pier. The Tribune ran it front page, online and print, and it was spreading fast: retweets, shares, calls for investigations. Victor's empire was crumbling. His goons rounded up, his name poison. Helen was in custody, stonewalling, but the evidence was ironclad. Mia had cleared her name, but the victory tasted like dust. "People are calling you a hero," Sophie said, standing. "Nick'd be proud." "Hero," Mia snorted, bitter. "I got him killed, sophomore Ray too." "Some hero." "Bullshit," Lena snapped, stepping closer. "Nick made his choice, jumped in to save you." Ray flipped. "Yeah, but Victor pulled the trigger. You didn't start this fire, Mia. You just put it out." Mia didn't argue, but the guilt gnawed anyway. She turned as a car rolled up the cemetery drive. Detective Ray Coleman's old partner, a grizzled guy named Torres. He'd taken over the case, promised to keep it clean. He climbed out, nodding at her. "Carter," he said, voice gravelly. "Salazar's crew's singing like canaries. Feds are in whole damn networks coming down. You did good." "Thanks," she said, flat. "Nick did better." Torres glanced at the grave, then back at her. "Heard from Ray's wife. Wanted you to know he left a note before Salazar got him. Said he was sorry, begged you to forgive him." Mia's throat tightened. "Too late for that." "Yeah," Torres said, shoving his hands in his pockets. "Thought you'd want to hear it anyway. Take care, Carter." He drove off, leaving her with the words she didn't want. Lena watched him go, then turned to Mia. "You gonna let Ray off the hook?" "Nope," Mia said, sharp. "He sold me out, daughter or not, he made his bed." "Cold," Lena said, but there was a glint of respect in her eyes. "What's next?" "Break," Mia said, exhaling. "Wrote the story, cleared the mess. Need to breathe before I dive back in." Sophie stepped up, hugging her tight. "You'll be okay, Mia. We will." Mia hugged back, softer than she meant. "Yeah, kid. You too." They walked to the Toyota, parked crooked by the gate. Lena slid behind the wheel, Sophie shotgun, and Mia took the back, staring out as the cemetery faded. The city loomed ahead, gray and gritty, but alive, freer. Maybe because of her. She'd torn it open, bled for it, lost Nick for it. Now she needed to figure out who she was without the fight. "Coffee?" Lena asked, pulling onto the road. "Whiskey," Mia said, managing a half smile. "Then sleep." "Atta girl," Lena grinned, and they drove into the dawn, the weight lifting just a little. Mia's picking up the pieces. What a ride. Subscribe and comment. Would you forgive Ray? Or is Mia right to hold the line? Let's hear it. The sun was dipping low over Lake Michigan, painting the water with streaks of gold and orange, a rare kind of quiet settling over Chicago. Mia stood on the shore near North Avenue Beach, the sand cold under her boots, the wind tugging at her hair like an old friend. It was a week after Nick's funeral, and the city was still humming with the fallout. Victor's empire in ruins, Helen facing trial, the Tribune's presses running hot with follow-ups. Mia's story had cracked Chicago open, and the pieces were still falling, but she was done chasing them. For now, her hands were empty. No phone, no notebook, just her and the lake. She ditched the noise after the article dropped, needing space to think, to feel something beyond the grind. The waves rolled in, steady and relentless, and she let them pull her thoughts loose. Nick's face kept surfacing, those hazel eyes, that last grip on her hand at the pier. Always loved you. She'd hated him, mourned him, and now what? The anger was fading, leaving a bruise she couldn't name. Footsteps crunched behind her. Lena, in her beat-up leather jacket, hands stuffed in her pockets. Figured I'd find you here, she said, stopping beside her. You look like you're auditioning for a sad movie. Feel like it, Mia said, her voice soft. How's Sophie? Holding up, Lena said. Started therapy, cut ties with Helen. Kid's tougher than she looks. Good, Mia nodded. She deserves better than the Delaney mess. Don't we all? Lena smirked, then sobered. You see the news? Feds raided Salazar's offices, found enough dirt to lock up half the city council. Your story's a damn avalanche. Mia shrugged, staring at the horizon. Did what I had to. Nick handed me the match, I just lit the fire. Yeah, but you carried it, Lena said, nudging her. Chicago's breathing easier cause of you. That's not nothing. Feels like nothing, Mia admitted, kicking at the sand. Lost Nick, right? Nearly lost you and sophomore. What's the point if it costs that much? Lena didn't answer right away, just watched the waves with her. Finally, she said, point is, you didn't fold. Truth's messy, Mia always has been. You stuck to it even when it sucked. That's who you are. Mia let that sit, the words sinking in. She thought back to the mic drop, the stairwell, the pier, every moment she'd chosen the fight over the easy out. Nick had trusted her with it, died for it, and she'd carried it through. The ache didn't fade, but it shifted, making room for something else, pride, maybe, or just the will to keep going. Gonna write again? Lena asked, breaking the quiet. Yeah, Mia said, a spark flickering back. Not yet, though. Need a minute to figure out what's next. But I'll be back, someone's gotta keep the bastards honest. Damn right, Lena grinned. You're stuck with me for it, too. Wouldn't have it any other way, Mia said, managing a real smile this time. She turned back to the lake, the city's skyline sharp against the dusk. Chicago wasn't perfect, never would be, but it was hers, flaws and all. She'd bled for it, loved it, and she'd keep fighting for it. That's what Nick saw in her, what she saw in herself now. The waves kept coming, and Mia stood there, letting the cold wash over her, feeling lighter than she had in weeks. The story wasn't over, not for her, not for the city, but this chapter was. And she was ready for the next one. The Chicago skyline glittered through the loft window, a jagged dance of lights against the November dark. Mia sat cross-legged on the hardwood floor of Lena's borrowed Wicker Park hideout, a half-empty whiskey bottle beside her, the amber glow catching the dust motes in the air. It had been 2 weeks since she stood by the lake, 2 weeks since she'd let the weight of Nick's death and Victor's fall settle into something she could carry. The city was still reeling. Helen's trial was set for spring. The feds were knee-deep in Salazar's wreckage, and Mia's byline was a household name. She'd taken a break, but the itch was back, that restless tug that always pulled her toward the next story. Lena was sprawled on the couch, laptop balanced on her stomach, scrolling X with a lazy grin. You're trending again, she said, not looking up. Some randos calling you Chicago's Avenger. Great, Mia muttered, sipping her drink. Next they'll want me in a cape. Wouldn't hate it, Lena quipped, then sat up, frowning. You get mail today? Nope, Mia said, setting the bottle down. Why? Lena tossed her a small package, brown paper. No return address, postmarked yesterday. Mia's name was scrawled in Sharpie, the handwriting unfamiliar. She tore it open, and a single white rose fell out, its petals crisp, a note taped to the stem. Her gut clenched. White roses were Nick's thing, a callback to their first date. She unfolded the paper, and 3 words stared back. The fight's not over. What the hell? Lena said, leaning over. Secret admirer or creepy stalker? Mia didn't answer, her pulse kicking up. She flipped the note, no signature, no clue, but the rose wasn't random. Someone knew her, knew Nick, knew too much. She stood, pacing, the whiskey forgotten. This isn't done, she said, voice low. Victor's gone. Helen's locked up. Who's left? Salazar had a network, Lena said, pulling her laptop closer. Could be a loose end. Let me dig. Before she could start, a knock rattled the door sharp, insistent. Mia froze, Lena's hand slipping to the crowbar by the couch. Expecting company? Lena whispered. No, Mia said, stepping to the peephole. A woman stood outside mid-30s, sharp suit, dark hair pulled tight, eyes scanning the hall like she'd done this before. Mia cracked the door, chain still on. Who are you? Elena Voss, the woman said, voice clipped. Ex-FBI private now. We need to talk, Carter. About what? Mia asked, not budging. Voss held up a flash drive, her expression grim. Salazar's last play, something bigger than you cracked. You're in it, whether you like it or not. Mia's blood ran cold. She glanced at Lena, who nodded, crowbar ready. 5 minutes, Mia said, unchaining the door. Make it good. Voss stepped in, all business, dropping the drive on the table. Victor had a partner silent, deep pockets. They're moving now, cleaning up his mess. Your name's on their list. Who? Lena demanded, already cracking her knuckles. Working on it, Voss said. But this, she tapped the drive, is a start. Recordings, ledgers, a shadow op tied to City Hall. Salazar was the face, this guy's the brain. Mia stared at the drive, the rose still in her hand. The fight wasn't over. Nick's ghost, Victor's shadow, a new enemy in the wings. She thought she'd closed the book, but Chicago had other plans. Why me? She asked, voice steady. You took down Salazar, Voss said. They think you've got more, maybe you do. I need your nose, Carter. We can end this. Mia met Lena's eyes wary, but in. She crushed the rose in her fist, petals falling like snow. All right, she said, steel creeping back. Let's dig. The city pulsed outside, restless, waiting. Mia wasn't done, not by a long shot. Mia's back in the game, what a twist. Subscribe and comment. What's your guess on this new player? Let's figure it out together.